The rain hammers against the warehouse windows like bullets. Inside, fluorescent lights flicker over concrete floors stained with decades of secrets. This isn't a place for hope. This is where desperation comes to die. Elena sits on a metal chair, her wrists bound with zip ties that bite into pale skin. 23 years old, auburn hair matted against her face, green eyes that once sparkled with dreams now vacant as broken glass. She stares at the floor, counting water drops that fall from a leaky pipe above. Drip, drip, drip. Each sound marks another second closer to whatever hell awaits. Sit up straight. The voice cuts through the warehouse atmosphere like a blade. Vera, her older sister, approaches with calculated steps. Designer heels click against concrete in perfect rhythm, the sound of someone who has already sold her soul and found the price acceptable. Elena doesn't move. Vera's manicured fingers grip her chin, forcing eye contact. I said sit up. The words carry no emotion, no recognition that they share the same blood, the same childhood memories of birthday candles and bedtime stories. Why? Elena's voice is barely a whisper, but it carries the weight of betrayal that could crush mountains. Vera releases her chin with a dismissive flick. Because buyers like confidence. They pay more for girls who still have some fight left. The warehouse door groans open. Men enter in expensive suits that can't quite hide the violence underneath. They move like predators, scanning the space, with eyes that appraise everything in terms of profit and loss. Some carry briefcases. Others have their hands buried deep in coat pockets, fingers wrapped around objects Elena doesn't want to imagine. Marcus, Elena's other sister's husband, stands near the entrance with a clipboard. His nervous energy betrays him, sweat beads on his forehead despite the warehouse chill. This is his first time arranging something like this, and it shows. He fumbles with papers, drops his pen twice, keeps glancing toward the exit as if planning his escape route. Gentlemen, Vera addresses the room with the confidence of someone born to command. Thank you for coming on such short notice. As discussed, we have one item for auction tonight. Elena's stomach lurches. Item, not person, not sister. Item. A man in a charcoal suit approaches. His face is all sharp angles and controlled violence. Show me the merchandise. Vera gestures toward Elena with the casual indifference of someone pointing out furniture. 5'6", no diseases, no addictions, clean background, never been married. The man circles Elena's chair like a shark sensing blood. He doesn't touch, but his presence is a violation nonetheless. Education? College graduate? Literature? Degree? Useful. Intelligent women are easier to control once they understand the consequences of disobedience. Elena closes her eyes. In her mind, she's 8 years old again, building sand castles with Vera at the beach. Their parents had taken them to the coast for summer vacation, and Vera had helped her dig moats around the castle to keep the waves away. We'll protect it together, Vera had promised. Sisters always protect each other. The memory dissolves as another voice joins the conversation. What's the starting bid? Marcus clears his throat. 50,000. Murmurs ripple through the small crowd. Elena opens her eyes to find 6 men studying her with the cold assessment of livestock buyers. Each face tells a story of violence normalized, of humanity discarded for profit. They see flesh, potential, investment opportunity. They see everything, except the woman who sits before them drowning in betrayal. 60, calls a voice from the back. 75. This from the man in charcoal. Elena's breathing becomes shallow. The numbers climb, and with each increase she feels herself disappearing piece by piece. Soon there will be nothing left but a transaction receipt and the echo of her own heartbeat. 100,000. The voice comes from near the warehouse door, cutting through the competitive chatter like a gunshot. Every head turns. A man stands in the shadows, tall and still as carved stone. His presence changes the room's atmosphere instantly. The other bidders shift uncomfortably, some taking unconscious steps backward. Even Vera, with all her calculated composure, hesitates. Elena can't see his face clearly, but she doesn't need to. Power radiates from him like heat from a furnace. This isn't just another buyer. This is someone who makes other dangerous men nervous. The man in charcoal recovers first. 120. 200,000. The shadowy figure doesn't raise his voice, but the words carry absolute finality. Plus my car. Silence descends like a curtain. Marcus drops his clipboard, papers scattering across the concrete. Vera's mask of control finally cracks, revealing the greed underneath. What kind of car? She asks, her voice betraying excitement despite her attempt at nonchalance. The man steps forward into the light. Elena's breath catches. He's younger than his presence suggested, perhaps 35, with dark hair and eyes that seem to catalog every weakness, every fear, every secret in the room. His suit is perfectly tailored, but he wears it like armor rather than fashion. Koenigsegg Regera, he says simply. One of 7 in existence. Elena doesn't know cars, but she recognizes the shift in the room's energy. Vera's eyes widen. Marcus actually stumbles backward. Even the other bidders look impressed despite themselves. That's worth $3 million, Marcus whispers. The man's smile is winter-made flesh. Then we have an agreement. Elena watches her sister calculate the numbers, watches humanity dissolve completely behind dollar signs. Vera nods once, sharp and decisive. Done. No. Elena's voice surprises everyone, including herself. She stands on unsteady legs, zip ties cutting deeper into her wrists. I'm not property. I'm not something to be sold and bought and traded like. She searches for words that can express the magnitude of this betrayal. The man from the shadows approaches her with measured steps. Up close, his eyes are gray like storm clouds, and they study her with an intensity that makes her skin crawl. When he speaks, his voice is soft as silk and twice as dangerous. What's your name? Elena. He nods as if filing the information away. I'm Vincent Romano. And you're right. You shouldn't be here. But you are. The only question now is whether you prefer to go with me or with one of them. He gestures toward the other bidders without taking his eyes off her face. Elena looks around the warehouse. The man in charcoal licks his lips like a predator savoring anticipated prey. Another buyer grins, revealing teeth filed to points. A third man fingers something metallic in his pocket, and Elena doesn't want to know what it is. Vincent Romano waits. He doesn't pressure, doesn't threaten, doesn't promise salvation or damnation. He simply presents reality and allows her to process it. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable. Finally, Elena nods once, barely perceptible, but enough. Romano reaches into his jacket and produces a knife. The other men tense, hands moving toward hidden weapons, but Romano simply cuts the zip ties binding Elena's wrists. The plastic falls to the concrete with tiny clicking sounds. The car keys are with my driver outside, he tells Vera. The title transfer will be completed within 24 hours. Vera nods eagerly. Of course. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Romano. He doesn't offer his hand or any other pleasantries. Business concluded, Vincent turns toward the door. Elena. She follows because the alternative is unthinkable. As they walk past the other bidders, she feels their hungry stares like physical touch. One man makes a comment under his breath that Elena doesn't catch, but Vincent stops walking. The warehouse falls silent again. Vincent turns slowly to face the man who spoke. Repeat that. The man's confidence evaporates. Nothing, I didn't. You have something to say about my property? The word property hits Elena like a slap, but she recognizes the protection underneath. In this world, being claimed by a wolf is preferable to being devoured by hyenas. The B.I. man shakes his head vigorously. No, sir, no disrespect intended. Vincent studies him for 3 more seconds, then continues toward the door. Elena follows, acutely aware that every step takes her further from her old life and deeper into something she can't yet comprehend. Outside, rain continues to fall. A black sedan idles at the curb, its engine purring like a satisfied predator. Vincent opens the passenger door and waits. Elena hesitates at the threshold between one life and another, between the devil she knows and the devil she doesn't. Behind them, she can hear Vera's laughter echoing from the warehouse, high and bright and completely empty of anything human. Elena gets into the car. The sedan moves through Chicago's streets like a ghost, silent except for the whisper of expensive tires on wet asphalt. Elena presses herself against the passenger door, watching neon signs blur past in streaks of red and blue. The city she's known her entire life suddenly feels foreign, as if crossing the threshold of that warehouse transported her to a parallel dimension where familiar landmarks hide darker purposes. Vincent hasn't spoken since they left the auction. His hands rest on the steering wheel with casual precision, fingers adorned with a single ring, black onyx set in platinum. Elena notices everything now, hyper-aware that each detail might be crucial for survival. The way he checks mirrors, not for traffic but for pursuit. How his jaw tightens constantly in his jacket pocket, ignored with deliberate discipline. 20 minutes into the drive, Elena breaks. "Where are you taking me?" "Home." The word carries no warmth, no reassurance. It's a geographical designation, nothing more. "Who's home?" Vincent glances at her, and Elena catches something unexpected in his expression. Not cruelty, but calculation mixed with what might be curiosity. "Mine. For now." The qualification hangs between them like a blade. For now could mean hours, days, or until he grows bored with whatever game he's playing. Elena's fingers trace the raw marks on her wrists where the zip ties cut deep. The pain keeps her grounded, reminds her this isn't a nightmare she can wake from. They turn onto Lakeshore Drive, leaving the city's core for neighborhoods where money whispers instead of shouting. Here, wealth hides behind high walls and private security, where silence is purchased by the square foot. The sedan purrs past mansions that could house 50 families, each one a fortress designed to keep the world at bay. Vincent's phone buzzes again. This time he answers, voice dropping to barely audible levels. "Not tonight. Tomorrow. And Marcus, clean up the warehouse. I don't want any traces." Elena's blood turns to ice water. Clean up. She thinks of her sister's laughter echoing off concrete, walls of the men who bid on her like livestock. Will they simply disappear, or will Vincent's cleanup be more permanent? In this world she's learning, loose ends are liabilities. The sedan turns through wrought iron gates that open without visible command. Motion sensors, hidden cameras, electronic eyes that recognize Vincent's approach and grant passage to his kingdom. Elena glimpses armed guards in the shadows. Not obvious, never obvious, but present like sharks beneath calm water. The house emerges from manicured darkness like something from another century. 3 stories of limestone and steel, windows that reflect nothing. Architecture that speaks of power consolidated over generations. This isn't new money's gaudy display, but old power's quiet confidence. The Romano family has owned this ground for decades, and it shows in every carefully planned detail. Vincent parks in a circular drive where a fountain stands silent and dry. No water flows here. Water makes noise, creates variables, offers opportunities for hidden microphones or other surveillance. Everything about this place is controlled, managed, predictable. Get out. Vincent's command is soft but absolute. Elena hesitates. Once she leaves this car, she'll be truly inside his world with no clear path back to anything resembling her former life. But the alternative, staying in a vehicle that feels increasingly like a mobile prison, offers no real choice at all. The house's front door opens before they reach it. A woman emerges, 40-something, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. She wears black pants and a white blouse that suggests uniform without officially declaring it. Everything about her radiates competent efficiency. "Mr. Romano," she greets with the perfect balance of respect and familiarity. "Your guest room is prepared." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Vincent's tone shifts slightly. Not warmer exactly, but acknowledging someone whose loyalty has been tested and proven. "Elena, this is Mrs. Chen. She manages the household. Whatever you need, ask her." Mrs. Chen studies Elena with sharp eyes that miss nothing. The torn dress, the marks on her wrists, the barely controlled panic that threatens to spill over into hysteria. Her expression doesn't change, but Elena senses evaluation rather than judgment. This woman has seen damaged people before. "Would you like something to eat?" Mrs. Chen asks. "Or perhaps a shower first?" The kindness in her voice nearly breaks Elena's carefully maintained composure. After hours of being treated as merchandise, simple human consideration feels overwhelming. Yes. A shower. Please." Vincent nods once to Mrs. Chen, then turns toward a hallway that disappears into the house's depths. "I have calls to make. Mrs. Chen will show you to your room. We'll talk tomorrow." He vanishes into shadows, leaving Elena alone with the housekeeper. Mrs. Chen's demeanor shifts subtly. Not quite maternal, but protective in the way of someone who understands vulnerability and chooses compassion despite working in a world that rarely rewards such choices. "This way, dear." They climb stairs lined with portraits, men in expensive suits spanning several decades, all sharing variations of Vincent's sharp features and predatory stillness. The Romano family tree, Elena realizes, a genetic legacy of violence rendered in oil paint and gilt frames. The guest room could house Elena's entire apartment. King-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, sitting area with leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Everything speaks of wealth accumulated through methods Elena prefers not to examine too closely. "The bathroom is through there," Mrs. Chen indicates with a gesture. "I've left clothing in the closet, nothing fancy, but clean and in your size. Dinner will be available whenever you're ready." Elena wants to ask how Mrs. Chen knows her size, how the room was prepared so quickly, how any of this makes sense. Instead, she simply nods. In this house, questions might be dangerous luxuries. Mrs. Chen moves toward the door, then pauses. "The windows don't open and there are security measures you can't see. But you're safe here. Mr. Romano doesn't bring people home lightly." The words carry layers Elena can't fully decode. Safe from whom? From the men at the auction or from Vincent himself? And what does it mean that he doesn't bring people home lightly? Is she special? Or simply his latest acquisition requiring temporary storage? Alone at last, Elena examines her prison. Because that's what this is, regardless of Egyptian cotton and lake views. The windows are indeed sealed, though so subtly she only notices by running her fingers along the frames. No latches, no visible security devices, but she's certain that attempting to break the glass would trigger alarms that would bring Vincent's people running. The closet contains clothes in exactly her size, jeans, blouses, undergarments, even shoes. All new, tags removed as if someone prepared for her arrival well in advance. The implications make her stomach lurch. How long has Vincent been watching her? How much of tonight's auction was theater? And how much was inevitability dressed as choice? In the bathroom, Elena finally sees herself clearly for the first time since the warehouse. The woman in the mirror looks like a stranger, hollow-eyed, pale, wearing defeat like an ill-fitting coat. She barely recognizes the person staring back, as if the auction stripped away more than just freedom. The shower water runs hot enough to burn, and Elena stands under the spray until her skin turns red. She wants to wash away the memory of strange men's eyes, the sound of her sister's voice reducing her to a commodity, the moment when she realized that family could be just another word for betrayal. But some stains go deeper than skin. Some violations can't be scrubbed away with soap and determination. When she emerges, night has claimed the house completely. Through her sealed windows, Elena can see lights scattered across Chicago's skyline like earthbound stars. Somewhere, out there, her sister is probably celebrating her newfound wealth. Somewhere out there, the men from the auction are nursing wounded pride and planning other hunts. And here, in this beautiful prison, Elena sits on a bed that costs more than she earned in a year, wearing clothes bought by a man whose last name alone makes dangerous people nervous. She's safe, Mrs. Chen promised, but safety, Elena is learning, can be just another form of captivity. Outside her door, she hears footsteps, measured, deliberate. stopping directly outside her room. The handle doesn't turn, but presence lingers like a question mark. Vincent, checking his newest acquisition, or simply reminding her that privacy is another illusion in his carefully controlled world. The footsteps move away, leaving Elena alone, with silence and the weight of choices that weren't really choices at all. Morning arrives without announcement. Elena wakes to gray light filtering through sealed windows, her body aching from a sleep that never quite came. The bed is too soft, the silence too complete, the air itself heavy with the weight of invisible surveillance. She lies still for several minutes, listening for sounds that might indicate life elsewhere in the house, but hears only the whisper of climate control and her own heartbeat. A soft knock interrupts her paralysis. "Miss Elena?" Mrs. Chen's voice carries through the door like a lifeline. "Mr. Romano requests your presence for breakfast." Requests. Elena recognizes the euphemism. In Vincent's world, requests and demands wear the same face. 20 minutes later, she follows Mrs. Chen through corridors lined with modern art that probably costs more than most people's homes. Abstract pieces in blacks and grays, violent slashes of color across pristine canvases, beauty designed to intimidate rather than inspire. Everything here serves dual purposes, Elena realizes. Nothing exists purely for aesthetics. The dining room opens before them like a stage set. Vincent sits at the head of a mahogany table that could seat 12, reading something on a tablet while consuming coffee from bone china. He doesn't look up when they enter, but Elena senses his awareness of her presence like static electricity. "Before a storm. Sit." He gestures toward a chair 3 seats away, close enough for conversation, distant enough to maintain hierarchy. Elena notices the placement. Vincent can observe her reactions while maintaining visual contact with both entrances to the room. Mrs. Chen materializes with breakfast. Eggs, Benedict, fresh fruit, coffee that smells like it costs more per pound than Elena's. Monthly grocery budget. The mundane ritual of morning meal feels surreal given the circumstances, like playing house while the world burns outside. Vincent sets aside his tablet and studies Elena with the same intensity he might apply to a business contract requiring careful consideration. His gray eyes catalog details, how she holds her fork, where her gaze settles, the way she unconsciously touches her wrists where zip tie marks still show like accusations. Sleep well? The question sounds genuine, which makes it more unsettling than obvious sarcasm would be. Yes. The lie comes automatically, a small act of defiance disguised as politeness. Vincent's smile suggests he recognizes the deception, but finds it mildly amusing rather than offensive. "Mrs. Chen tells me you've been cooperative. That's wise." Elena sets down her fork with deliberate care. "What happens now?" "Now we establish boundaries." Vincent reaches into his jacket and produces a phone. Sleek, black, expensive. He slides it across the table toward her. "Your new number is programmed in. Mine is the only other contact." Elena stares at the device without touching it. "I don't understand." "You have freedom of movement within certain parameters. The grounds, the house, the immediate neighborhood. There are invisible lines you'll learn not to cross." Vincent's tone remains conversational, discussing weather or stock prices rather than the terms of her captivity. "And if I cross them?" Vincent considers the question as if it hadn't occurred to him, though Elena suspects he's mapped every possible scenario weeks in advance. "Then you'll discover why most people prefer to stay within the boundaries I set." The threat hangs in air scented with fresh flowers from arrangements that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Everything about this moment epitomizes the Romano approach, violence wrapped in silk, control disguised as consideration. "I have business today," Vincent continues, returning to his breakfast as if the conversation has concluded successfully. "Mrs. Chen will show you around. Familiarize yourself with your new environment." Elena wants to scream that this isn't her environment, that she doesn't belong here, that less than 24 hours ago she was a free woman with plans and dreams, and a future that didn't involve being owned by a man whose last name appears in FBI files. Instead, she nods and picks up the phone. The device feels heavier than it should, weighted with implications she's not ready to examine. When she powers it on, the screen displays a single message: "Welcome home." Vincent finishes his coffee and stands. "I'll be back this evening. We'll discuss your situation in more detail then." He pauses at the door, looking back with an expression Elena can't decode. "Elena? Don't disappoint me." The words follow him out of the room like an echo that refuses to fade. Mrs. Chen begins clearing dishes with practiced efficiency, her movements suggesting years of cleaning up after conversations that reshape lives and end futures. "Would you like to see the gardens?" she asks. "Fresh air might do you good." The gardens sprawl across 3 acres of manicured perfection, each plant and pathway designed with the same obsessive attention to detail that characterizes everything in Vincent's domain. Rose bushes bloom in precise geometric patterns. Pools reflect sky without revealing the security cameras hidden among decorative sculptures. Elena walks beside Mrs. Chen, absorbing lessons disguised as casual observation. The staff quarters hidden behind ornamental hedges. The garage that houses Vincent's collection of vehicles, each one chosen for speed, intimidation, or both. The guest house where certain business associates stay when their presence requires discretion. "How long have you worked here?" Elena asks as they pause beside a fountain where koi fish circle in endless patterns. 15 years. Mrs. Chen's answer carries the weight of choices made and prices paid. Since Vincent was 20, fresh from his father's funeral and unprepared for what leadership requires. Elena processes this information. Vincent inherited his position, didn't earn it through violence or ambition but through genetics and tragedy. The knowledge makes him seem more human somehow, which is probably dangerous thinking. What was he like then? Mrs. Chen considers the question while watching koi pursue each other through crystal clear water. Angry, lost, determined to prove himself worthy of a legacy he never wanted. She turns to study Elena's face. He's changed since then. Become what the family needed him to become. The implication settles over Elena like shadow from gathering clouds. Vincent Romano wasn't born a predator. He was shaped into one by circumstances and expectations and the weight of blood obligations. Does that make him more dangerous or less? Elena suspects the answer might determine whether she survives long enough to find out. They return to the house as afternoon shadows begin their slow conquest of manicured lawns. Elena spends the remaining daylight hours exploring her cage, mapping its dimensions, and testing its limits. The library contains editions that belong in museums. The exercise room features equipment worth more than most cars. The wine cellar holds bottles from years when Elena's grandparents were children. Every room tells the same story. Wealth accumulated through methods that don't appear in annual reports. Power consolidated through fear rather than respect. Legacy, built on foundations that shift whenever conscience threatens to take root. As evening approaches, Elena finds herself back in her assigned room, watching Chicago's lights flicker to life beyond windows that might as well be paintings for all the freedom they represent. She thinks about her sister Vera, probably sleeping soundly on Egyptian cotton sheets purchased with blood money. She thinks about the men from the auction, pursuing other prey or planning revenge against the wolf who stole their anticipated feast. Most of all, she thinks about Vincent Romano, the angry young man who inherited an empire built on violence, who transformed himself into something his enemies fear, and his allies respect but never fully trust. What does a man like that want with a literature teacher whose biggest crime was being loved too much by parents who died too young? The answer, Elena suspects, will arrive with evening's final act. Footsteps echo in the hallway outside her door, measured, deliberate, familiar. Vincent has returned from whatever business required his attention during daylight hours. The footsteps pause outside her room and Elena holds her breath, wondering if tonight will bring answers or simply deeper questions. The handle turns with mechanical precision, and Vincent Romano steps into her sanctuary, carrying the weight of decisions made in shadows and the promise of revelations that might rewrite everything Elena thinks she understands about her situation. Have you ever found yourself questioning Whether the people who claim to protect you might be the ones you most need protection from. Because sometimes the line between salvation and imprisonment is thinner than trust. And once you cross it, the way back becomes invisible. If this story resonates with your own experiences of betrayal and unexpected alliances, share your thoughts below. Not about whether you enjoyed it, but about the moments when you realize that family doesn't always mean safety, and strangers don't always mean danger. Vincent enters Elena's room like shadows given form, his presence filling the space without disturbing the air itself. He carries 2 glasses of wine, deep red liquid that catches lamplight like captured blood. Everything about the moment feels choreographed, from his timing to the selection of vintage, yet Elena senses genuine uncertainty beneath his controlled exterior. May I? He gestures toward the sitting area where leather chairs face each other across a coffee table worth more than most cars. The politeness feels deliberate, a conscious choice to offer courtesy where none is required. Elena nods because refusal isn't really an option, though Vincent waits for her consent as if it matters. This contradiction, seeking permission while holding absolute power, defines their entire interaction. He hands her wine without their fingers touching, maintaining distance that suggests either respect or calculation. You want to know why? Vincent settles into his chair with fluid grace, every movement economical and purposeful. Why the auction? Why you? Why any of this? Yes. Elena's voice sounds foreign to her own ears, steadier than she feels, carrying defiance she didn't know she possessed. Vincent studies his wine as if it contains answers to questions he's afraid to ask. 3 months ago, federal agents raided one of my warehouses. They found nothing, of course, and were too careful for that. But they were close. Closer than they'd ever been. Elena waits. In the silence between his words, she hears the house settling. Around them, creaks and whispers that might be structural or might be security systems adjusting to their presence. The raid was based on information from someone inside my organization. Someone who knew our schedules, our procedures, our protocols. Vincent's voice drops to barely above whisper, yet each word carries the weight of granite. Someone I trusted. The implication hangs between them like smoke from an extinguished flame. Elena begins to understand that her presence here isn't random, isn't the whim of a powerful man whose rules she doesn't yet comprehend. Your sister Vera, Vincent continues, works for Morrison Financial, high-end accounting for clients who prefer discretion. 3 months ago, she began asking questions about specific transactions. Small inquiries easily explained as professional thoroughness. Except Morrison Financial has handled Romano family accounts for 2 decades without incident. Elena's wine glass slips from nerveless fingers. Red liquid, spreading across Persian carpet like accusation. You're saying Vera? I'm saying your sister is either remarkably curious or remarkably foolish. Either way, she created a problem that required creative solutions. Vincent's eyes never leave Elena's face, cataloging every micro-expression, every betrayal of emotion that might reveal useful information. The room tilts on its axis. Everything Elena thought she understood about her situation reshapes itself into patterns she can't yet decode. The auction, the men bidding on me, that was all. Theater. Vincent confirms what Elena's mind rejects. Those men work for me. The warehouse belongs to me. Your sister's financial desperation? Carefully cultivated through a series of bad investments and unexpected expenses. Elena stands abruptly, pacing to the sealed windows where Chicago glitters in the distance like promises nobody intends to keep. You orchestrated everything. The debt that made her desperate enough to sell me, the auction, all of it. Yes. The simple affirmation hits harder than elaborate explanation would have. Vincent doesn't justify or rationalize or seek understanding. He simply acknowledges the truth and waits for Elena to process its implications. Why not just kill her? Elena turns from the window, surprised by her own pragmatism. If she's betraying you, if she's working with federal agents, why this elaborate performance? Vincent's smile carries no warmth, only appreciation for Elena's analytical clarity. Because killing Vera would confirm federal suspicions and escalate their investigation. But acquiring her sister, Her beloved innocent sister provides better leverage than death ever could. Elena sinks back into her chair, understanding flooding through her like ice water. I'm not a prisoner, I'm a weapon. Your insurance. Vincent corrects with precision that suggests the distinction matters to him. Vera loves you, despite everything. That love makes her controllable in ways that fear alone never could. The revelation reframes every interaction Elena has had since waking in this house. Mrs. Chen's kindness isn't compassion but careful management. The sealed windows aren't meant to keep Elena inside but to remind her that escape would doom the sister who sold her. Even this conversation serves Vincent's purposes, ensuring Elena understands her role in his larger strategy. What happens to me when you don't need insurance anymore? Elena asks, though she's not certain she wants the answer. Vincent considers the question with the same intensity he might apply to stock purchases or personnel decisions. That depends entirely on you. Meaning? Meaning I've learned that forced loyalty breeds resentment and resentment breeds betrayal. I prefer willing cooperation to coerced compliance. Vincent leans forward slightly, his attention sharp as surgical steel. I'm offering you a choice your sister never gave you. Elena laughs, the sound brittle and sharp in the room's controlled atmosphere. What choice? Cooperate or watch my sister die? Cooperate and build something better than the life you lost. Vincent's voice carries conviction that might be genuine or might be masterful manipulation. I didn't bring you here just to control Vera. I brought you here because I've been watching you for months and I recognize something in you that most people lack. Which is? The ability to adapt, to survive, to become more than your circumstances. Suggest you should be. Vincent stands, moving to the windows where Elena stood moments before. You taught literature to children whose parents couldn't afford private tutors. You volunteered at shelters on weekends. You sent money to your sister even when you couldn't afford it. You built meaning from nothing. Elena stares at him, processing the depth of surveillance his knowledge implies. You've been watching me for months. I've been watching your entire family for months. But you were the only one worth acquiring. Vincent turns from the window, his expression unreadable. Vera sees everything in terms of profit and loss. You see everything in terms of human cost. That perspective has value in my organization. You want me to work for you. I want you to understand that you already are. Vincent returns to his chair, the movement casual but somehow final. The question is whether you'll do so as a willing partner or a reluctant prisoner. Elena processes the implications. Partnership with Vincent Romano means complicity in whatever activities generate enough profit to buy mansions and politicians and human beings. But imprisonment means helplessness. While her sister's fate hangs in the balance of games Elena can't influence. What kind of work? She asks, hating herself for considering his offer. Nothing that violates your moral code. Vincent's answer comes too quickly, suggesting he's anticipated this question. Books need to be balanced. Legitimate businesses need management. Cultural activities need coordination. The Romano family has interests beyond what federal agents investigate. Elena recognizes the careful phrasing, the way Vincent offers justification without requiring her to examine it too closely. He's providing her with rationalization she can live with, assuming she chooses to live with it. And my sister? Remains under observation but unharmed, assuming her cooperation continues. Vincent finishes his wine with deliberate ceremony. Your presence here ensures that cooperation remains in her best interest. Elena stares into her empty glass, seeing her reflection fractured in crystal that costs more than she earned in a month. The woman looking back appears older than 23, marked by knowledge she didn't possess 24 hours ago. Need time to think. Of course. Vincent stands, collecting both wine glasses with practiced efficiency. But Elena, don't think too long. In my experience, overthinking leads to poor decisions, and poor decisions have consequences that extend beyond the person making them. He moves toward the door, then pauses with his hand on the handle. Mrs. Chen will bring breakfast at 8. We'll discuss your decision then. The door closes with mechanical precision, leaving Elena alone with silence and the weight of choices that aren't really choices at all. Outside her windows, Chicago sleeps unaware that one woman's decision might determine whether federal investigations succeed or fail, whether families remain intact or disappear into shadows where accountability goes to die. Elena lies in darkness, counting heartbeats and calculating the price of survival in a world where love itself becomes ammunition in wars she never wanted to fight. Dawn breaks over Chicago like a judgment rendered in gray and gold. Elena hasn't slept. Instead, she spent the night counting the cost of every decision that brought her to this moment. The mathematics of survival, she's discovered, require calculations that no literature course ever prepared her for. At precisely 8 o'clock, Mrs. Chen arrives with breakfast and an expression that suggests she knows today will reshape the household's dynamics in ways that can't be undone. The older woman sets down a tray containing coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and pastries that smell like childhood memories of better times. Mr. Romano is waiting in his study, Mrs. Chen says, her voice carrying the weight of someone who has delivered similar messages before. When you're ready. Elena knows she'll never be ready for what comes next, but readiness is another luxury she can't afford. She dresses carefully. Jeans and a blouse from the wardrobe Vincent provided, clothes that fit perfectly because he's been watching her long enough to know her measurements. Every detail of her captivity bears the hallmark of meticulous planning. The study occupies the mansion's heart like a command center disguised as a gentleman's retreat. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves hold volumes that span centuries, philosophy, history, literature, and legal texts that suggest Vincent's education extends beyond street corners and back-alley negotiations. A massive desk dominates the room's center, its surface clear except for a single manila folder and 2 phones that probably connect to networks Elena prefers not to imagine. Vincent stands with his back to the door, studying something through bulletproof windows that overlook the lake. He doesn't turn when she enters, but Elena senses his awareness of her presence like static electricity before a storm. Have you decided? His voice carries no pressure, no hint of preferred outcome. The question sounds genuinely neutral, as if her answer matters less than the process that led to it. I want to see my sister first. Vincent turns slowly, his expression unreadable. That's not possible. Then we have nothing to discuss. Elena moves toward the door, calling his bluff, with confidence she doesn't feel. Elena. The single word stops her mid-stride. Not a command, not a threat, just her name spoken with something that might be respect. Vera doesn't know you're here. As far as she's concerned, you disappeared after the auction. Seeing you now would compromise the psychological pressure that keeps her cooperative. Elena processes this information, understanding that even her sister's grief serves Vincent's purposes. She thinks you're beyond her reach, which amounts to the same thing. Vincent moves to his desk, fingers tracing the manila folder's edge with deliberate precision. Your death, your disappearance, haunts her. That guilt makes her malleable, in ways that threats alone never could. The casual cruelty of psychological manipulation delivered in conversational tones makes Elena's stomach lurch. Yet she recognizes the twisted logic. A grieving sister makes fewer demands than one who knows her beloved sibling remains alive and potentially rescuable. What's in the folder? Elena asks, though she suspects the answer will reshape her understanding of everything she thought she knew about her situation. Vincent opens the folder with ceremony reserved for significant revelations. Inside, Elena glimpses photographs, surveillance images of herself taken over months without her knowledge, walking to work, buying groceries, visiting their parents' graves on Sunday afternoons. The scope of observation makes her skin crawl, with violation. I've been studying you, Vincent confirms what the images suggest. Your patterns, your relationships, your moral framework, your psychological profile suggests someone capable of adaptation under extreme circumstances. Elena stares at photographs of herself living a life she thought was private, making choices she believed were her own. You've been manipulating me for months. I've been evaluating you for months. The manipulation began 3 weeks ago when your sister's financial situation became untenable. Vincent closes the folder with finality that suggests the past no longer matters. What matters now is whether you choose to become a partner or remain a prisoner. Partners don't blackmail each other. Partners also don't enter relationships with equal power. Vincent's smile carries Winter's bite. You have something I need. Leverage over your sister and skills I can utilize. I have something you need. Protection from consequences of choices you didn't make. Elena recognizes the sophisticated coercion disguised as mutuality. Vincent offers partnership while holding all the cards, suggests choice while controlling every variable. Yet beneath his calculated manipulation, she senses something unexpected, genuine interest in her potential beyond mere utility. What happens if I say no? Vincent considers the question with a tension that suggests he hasn't fully decided the answer himself. You remain here, comfortable but constrained, until your sister's situation resolves itself one way or another. Then we reassess based on changed circumstances. And if I say yes? You begin learning how power actually works in the world beyond university classrooms and nonprofit organizations. Vincent moves around his desk, closing distance between them without making the approach feel threatening. You discover whether your moral convictions can survive contact with reality. Elena understands that Vincent isn't just offering employment. He's proposing transformation into someone she doesn't recognize, someone capable of participating in activities that exist beyond legal boundaries and moral comfort zones. The woman who taught literature to disadvantaged children would disappear, replaced by someone harder, colder, more pragmatic. I need guarantees about my sister's safety. You have them, contingent on her continued cooperation and your successful integration into our organization. Vincent's phrasing suggests legalistic precision, designed to provide reassurance without actual commitment. Elena stares out windows that frame Lake Michigan like a painting of freedom she can observe, but never touch. Somewhere beyond those walls, her sister grieves for a sister she believes lost forever. Somewhere beyond those walls, federal agents pursue investigations that might topple the Romano Empire if they succeed. And here, in this beautiful prison, Elena weighs choices that will determine whether she emerges from this experience as victim or accomplice. I accept. The words leave her mouth before conscious decision reaches her brain, as if some survival instinct deeper than rational thought has calculated odds and chosen the path most likely to preserve life, if not innocence. Vincent nods once, the gesture carrying finality that reshapes Elena's world in real time. Mrs. Chen will show you to your new office. You start Monday reviewing financial records for our legitimate holdings. Nothing that would violate your conscience. Elena almost laughs at the qualifier, as if conscience remains relevant once you've agreed to partnership with people who solve problems through methods that don't appear in business school textbooks. Vincent, she uses his first name deliberately, testing the boundaries of their new relationship. What if I disappoint you? His answer comes without hesitation, delivered with matter-of-fact certainty that makes it more terrifying than any direct threat could be. Then you'll learn why most people prefer to exceed my expectations rather than fall short of them. Elena leaves the study understanding that she's crossed a threshold from which retreat is impossible. Behind her, Vincent returns to his windows, and whatever thoughts occupy men who reshape lives with the same casual attention, others apply to rearranging furniture. The hallway stretches before her like a path into territory she's never imagined exploring. Each step carries her further from the woman she was and closer to someone she doesn't yet recognize. Someone capable of survival in a world where love itself becomes ammunition, and loyalty is measured in the willingness to abandon everything you once believed about right and wrong. Mrs. Chen waits at the hallway's end, holding keys to an office that will become Elena's new classroom in subjects no university ever taught. The education begins now. Behind every choice lies a shadow version of ourselves we never hoped to meet. Sometimes that shadow wears the face of necessity, sometimes the mask of survival, and sometimes the smile of someone who has learned that principles are luxuries only the powerless can afford. What would you choose if love became your weakness and corruption your only strength? Drop your thoughts below, because the most haunting stories are the ones that make us question which version of ourselves would emerge when the lights go out and the cameras stop rolling.